Imagine a fun weekend with old friends, then one tiny mistake turns the whole reunion into a desperate fight for survival. That's Open Water 2, Adrift, and today we're walking through every tense, heartbreaking moment. Hey, welcome back to Movie Recaps Hub Podcast. I'm your host. If you love tight, tense recaps that get straight to the heart of a film, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into Open Water 2, Adrift 2006. Full story, every beat, let's go. So it starts simple. A group of old high school friends decide to reunite for a weekend at sea. Amy and her husband James bring their baby daughter, Sarah. Another couple, Zach and Lauren, are there too. The trip was organized by Dan, who shows up with his young girlfriend Michelle. Dan brags that the fancy yacht is his, trying hard to impress everyone. Right away you notice something. Amy looks uneasy. She has a serious fear of water, a trauma from childhood. She'd seen her father drown, and because of that she insists on wearing a life jacket the whole time. The others go for a swim and leave Amy on board. Dan, trying to be playful and show off, picks Amy up and jumps into the sea with her. She screams in terror, but nobody notices something important. They forgot to lower the yacht's ladder. When they try to get back on board, they discover the sides of the boat are about 10 feet high, too smooth to climb. No matter how hard they try, they just can't reach the deck. Panic sets in. They're stuck in the water with nothing to push against. Every attempt to pull themselves up fails. Amy, who already fears the water, is in a worse state. She can barely stay afloat, clinging to James for support. But that can't last forever. If they can't get back on the yacht, it's only a matter of time before things get deadly. Michelle's condition deteriorates from being in cold water too long. She starts shaking uncontrollably. Dan tries to comfort her and spots an inflatable dolphin floating nearby. He tries to use it to push himself up, but it's unstable. He pops it after multiple attempts. Then he looks to the yacht's flag and thinks maybe he can grab it like a rope. He lunges, finally grabs a corner, and just as he begins to pull himself up, the flag tears. Another failure. The group is crushed and running out of options. While they regroup, Michelle panics because she feels something move under the water. Dan dives to check. It's a false alarm, but the scare drains them more. Michelle, badly weakened, starts choking and can't hold on. Desperate, she swims behind Amy and pushes her underwater, trying to take her life jacket. James sees it and pulls Amy back up just in time. Michelle explains she had no choice. She's not a strong swimmer and had reached her limit. No one blames her too harshly. Lauren helps her float with minimal effort. Anger builds though, and it's directed at Dan. They scold him for forgetting the ladder and for tossing Amy, who can't swim well, into the water. On top of that, the baby Sarah is still sleeping alone in the cabin. Dan's recklessness put them all in danger. He doesn't defend himself. He quietly swims away from their anger. To conserve energy, the group finds two small pull rings near the bow and holds themselves up on those. Time slips by until Amy hears a phone ringing. Hope spikes. They locate it. Zach's clothes are hanging on the railing with his phone still in the pocket. Zach dives, yanks the clothes, fumbles through the pocket, and pulls out the phone. But there's no signal. Michelle panics and grabs for it, only to make it wetter. The phone dies. Zach, furious, throws it into the sea. The hope they had just seen vanishes. Then a yacht appears in the distance. They scream and wave like crazy, but the people on that boat think it's a friendly wave and sail off. Their last bit of hope disappears. The suffering just compounds. Dan suggests tying their remaining clothes together to make a rope to haul someone up. They do it and finally hook the rope over the railing. Zach, the strongest, starts to climb. He nearly makes it. One hand touches the deck, and then the rope snaps. He falls back into the water. So close, yet another failure. Frustration grows, but there's nothing they can do. James refuses to sit and wait to die. He swims under the yacht to inspect the bottom for another way in. After searching, he finds nothing, and to make matters worse, his knife slips from his hand and sinks. He dives after it using precious energy. When he finally retrieves it, he's choking and desperate. In his panic, his head hits the boat's hard surface, causing a skull fracture. He blacks out. His condition is critical. Panic and fear ratchet higher. Zach grabs the knife and tries to anchor it into the yacht's side to climb. Dan, still pretending ownership of the boat, rushes over, worried about damaging it. Tension explodes. In the struggle for the knife, Dan accidentally stabs James in the body. Because James has been in the water so long, the wound won't stop bleeding. Zach thrashes, bleeding badly, the water around him turns red. Michelle, terrified the blood might attract sharks, flees, a terrible choice for someone who can't swim well. She quickly runs out of strength and sinks beneath the waves. Zach's wound, soaked too long, becomes fatal. He begins to die. One by one, the group collapses under exhaustion and injury. James, partially conscious and enraged, lashes out at Dan, punching him and blaming him for everything. Dan, finally confronting reality, confesses the truth: the yacht wasn't his. He's a worker hired to care for the boat and took it out without permission to pretend he was rich and impress his friends. He admits he stopped Zach earlier because he didn't want the boat damaged. He never imagined things would spiral like this. He keeps apologizing, but the damage is done. Zach quietly closes his eyes and dies. They're too exhausted to carry him. They have to let his body float away. James, who'd hit his head, gets worse. Lauren refuses to give up and decides to try swimming to shore, a hopeless attempt in the middle of the ocean. Amy clings to the injured James, trying to keep both afloat. Dan, desperate and now willing to risk damaging the yacht, remembers the knife and dives down to search for it. Baby Sarah can be heard crying from the cabin, and Amy's maternal anxiety spikes. Then the weather turns. A few raindrops fall, then heavy rain pours down. Amy drags James toward the front of the boat and tries to shelter under the bow. But James is already gone. The injuries took his life. Amy, heartbroken, has to let him go. She pushes his body aside and watches it sink. Dan can't find the knife in the storm. The waves make everything nearly impossible. Amy swims over to him just in time. She takes off her life jacket and gives it to him. They both manage to grab the metal loops on the boat and hold on. Lightning flashes and reflects off Dan's goggles, and the glare gives him an idea. Dan smashes his goggles against the yacht to get a lens out. Blood pours from his hand as he pries a lens free. He jams the lens into a crack in the boat's surface, wedges it, and uses it as a hold. He lets Amy step onto his back so she can try to climb. Amy is exhausted, and the storm is brutal, but after repeated tries she finally touches a rope hanging over the deck. With Dan lifting as hard as he can, she pulls herself up. Amy collapses on the deck, exhausted and shaking. She staggers to the safety latch and releases the emergency ladder. It lowers. She stumbles into the cabin and finds baby Sarah had rolled onto the floor. Amy grabs her, holds her tight, and finally breathes a shaky sigh of relief. Outside, Dan still hasn't made it up. The guilt of losing his friends weighs on him. Amy senses something is wrong and goes to look for him. On the deck, she sees Dan slowly swimming away, choosing to end his life. The old shadows of her childhood trauma come roaring back. But this time, Amy doesn't freeze. She dives after him and swims as hard as she can, trying to save him. The next morning, a fishing boat approaches the seemingly abandoned yacht. The fishermen hear a baby crying. They find Amy, severely traumatized, sitting on the deck with Dan's body beside her, and baby Sarah clutched in her arms. That's the full story of Open Water 2: Adrift. It's a brutal little reminder of how one careless action, a moment of pride, and a chain of small mistakes can spiral into catastrophe. The movie isn't just about the physical struggle to survive. It's about guilt, responsibility, and the trauma that sticks around after the sea has calmed. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, drop a comment, tell me which moment hit you hardest, and subscribe to Movie Recaps Hub podcast for more full-length recaps like this. Thanks for listening, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next recap.